Greg Ducharme Golf. I am Greg Ducharme, and this is your Rocket Classic preview, and this is going to be a good one. Although it is the last Rocket Classic that will ever take place, we also have a new golf course, which is very unique. You don't see this circumstance take place very often, but the Rocket Classic is going to end after this year, and it looks like they're going to go out with a bang because, like I said, Detroit Golf Club has undergone a $16 million renovation. The course looks great. Looks like they added a lot of character to it, and we're going to get into those changes. We'll also talk about some of the key players that I like, and we're going to go through our typical process. We're going to go through some of the key stats of the golf course, and we'll also address how the changes may affect those. We'll look at some of the key comp courses, and all of these aspects are going to lead us to the players that we really like. Again, this is my process of how I go through figuring out who is going to play well in a given week. Last week at the 3M Open, we had a lot of success. Jackson Koiven was in the preview video, who went on to win. Emiliano Grillo and Ben Coles were also right there heading into the final round. And this model, if you will, or this process, led us right to them. It also led to some of the other players, even some of the players that I didn't mention at the end of the video, like a Davis Thompson, for instance, didn't really show up in the recent form portion, but did show up in many of the other metrics. So these are elements that I find to be very important in handicapping an event, and I want to bring them to you so you can make really strong decisions this week at the Rocket Classic. Now, without further ado, we're going to get right into it, but before I do, I just want to ask you to like and subscribe to this channel. It's still a brand new channel, and your engagement has been great so far. I've really appreciated all the comments and questions that you've left. The feedback has been very useful for me in getting this channel started. I'm glad to see many of you have enjoyed. And if you like what you see, again, I ask you, please click that subscribe button. It really helps me out going forward and continuing to make these videos that I hope you find useful. So without further ado, let's get right into it, and we're going to dive into the notebook. This is where we look at course facts, course stats, winning trends, course history, best performers, and of course the comp courses, which have been very valuable, and I'm very excited to bring those to you today. So let's start with Detroit Golf Club. We'll go through some of these key facts about the golf course, some of the history, some of the things you need to know starting this week. First, it is a Donald Ross design. He designed and finished building this golf course in 1916. And while you can see a lot of the Donald Ross design characteristics, well, you could over the last couple of seasons, it turned into one of the more benign layouts on the PGA Tour. There wasn't much thought that went into tee shots. You really just hit driver as far as you could. And in today's game, as far as the PGA Tour players hit the ball, a lot of the bunkers and design features that Ross put in were kind of removed. So it became a very bland golf course. It is now a par 70 measuring 7,328 yards. In the previous 8 renditions, it was a par 72 measuring 7,370 yards. This is actually the 8th rendition. There were 7 previous. The average green size has gone way up. Again, we're going to get into some of these key changes, but the average green size this year will be 6,700 square feet. That's a big increase from what was 5,100 square feet before. The green surfaces are a mix of bent and POA, and it is the flattest golf course on tour. I mentioned how it was a rather benign layout. This is one of the reasons why. There's almost no elevation change throughout the entire property. The rough is a bluegrass mix of about 4 inches, although they have also added this year some heather, if you will, some wispy fescue, which will be featured throughout the golf course, and most notable on the lips of many of the bunkers. It'll give the bunkering a much different look. Now, like I said, it was a rather benign layout, and it led to really low scoring. You take a look at these scoring averages since 2020, and you'll notice they're quite low, and they rank very easy by PGA Tour standards. 2025, 69.59, the 44th toughest course on the PGA Tour. That's about the sixth easiest golf course on tour. 2024, 70.54. That was 32nd on tour. In difficulty, 69.92 in 2023, which was 49th on tour. In a typical year, there's about 50 golf courses in these standings. So that is very easy by tour standards. 2022 was 70.4, still very easy. 2021, 70.55. You guessed it, still easy. And lastly, in 2020, 70.05, which is very easy. So all in all, if you combine these, this is definitely, it has been one of the 10 easiest golf courses on the PGA Tour. Now, these numbers are measured. I give you the raw scoring average, but the numbers are measured and ranked relative to par because there are different pars on different golf courses on tour. And Detroit Golf Club used to be a par 72. So when you see those numbers of 69, they're approaching 3 under par for a field average. That is very low and very much on the easy side. Now, this may change somewhat, but I still think it's important to go through. It gives you an idea of the general layout, and these are the proximity buckets. Looking at shots inside of 100 yards, 17.8% of the approach shots are inside 100 yards. That is way up on PGA Tour averages. 100 to 125, 10.4%. 125 to 150, 12.8%. 150 to 175, 19.8%. That's a big number, but it's still less than PGA Tour average. 175 to 200, only 7.1%. That is way less than tour average. Normally, this 150 to 200 range, most golf courses have the highest number here. And seeing 175 to 200 that low is very rare and very surprising. 200 to 225, you see 10% of the approach shots in that range, 7.7% from 225 to 250, and 14.4% from 250 plus. Again, you used to have 4 par 5s on this golf course, and when guys are going for the green in 2, that number is included. So that definitely amps up the percentages there. Now, again, that will change, and we'll see how those numbers change, although I do think while some of the par 4s have been lengthened, I still think you get an idea. There's a lot of wedge shots on this golf course, and there will be some longer shots. It's that middle iron range that seems to see a dip, and I believe that will still be the case this year. But take that with a grain of salt because you don't know how firm the golf course is going to play or what kind of strategy the players are going to use off the tee. They will have more decisions to make, and that's going to affect the numbers and yardages that they have coming into the greens, even if the yardage on the scorecard looks somewhat similar. Now, again, this is another reason why Detroit Golf Club underwent some renovations. You look at these winning scores, and you'll see they are quite low. 2025, Aldrich Potgieter, 22 under par. Cam Davis in 2024, 18 under par. Ricky Fowler in 2023, 24 under par. Not even the lowest of all. 2022, this is the lowest of all, 26 under par. 2021, Cam Davis won again, also at 18 under par. Cam Davis, the only winner on this list who won at less than 20 under par. He did it twice. 2020, Bryson DeChambeau, 23 under par. That was when Bryson was hitting the ball a very long way. He still is, but that was early on in the transition Bryson made in his career, becoming a very long hitter. It worked at Detroit Golf Club. Now, these numbers are going to change significantly. Even if they didn't, alter the golf course in any way, these numbers would change simply because they changed the par. But there are some other elements that they added, some other changes that they made to this golf course that will affect scoring. So let's take a look at some of those notable changes. Again, as I mentioned, the par went from 72 to 70. Number 7 moved to a 505-yard par 4. And number 17 moved to a 537-yard par 4. For the members, 7 will play as a par 4. 17 still plays as a par 5. So for the members, it's a par 71. They did a lot of work to the bunkers. They made them deeper. They made them larger. And as I read, they made them a lot sexier, a lot more interesting. There's fescue grass that you'll see on top of these bunkers, and it will definitely add to the challenge on the for the tour players. In just about every category, this golf course was on the easier side. The bunker play was easy. The scrambling was easy. It was easy to hit greens at regulation. It was easy to hit fairways, and they hit it a long way. So in just about every way except putting inside of 10 feet, this is one of the easier golf courses on tour, and I'll be curious to see how that changes. Now, you also see here they have larger greens. It went from about 5,100 square feet to 6,700 square feet. So they're significantly larger. While that may make them easy to hit, it may sound like they're going to be a lot easier to hit. The real reason is to bring back some of the hole locations that were available in Donald Ross's original design. So even though the greens are larger, my guess is the proximity to the hole is going to go up. You're going to see a lot longer putts for birdie. It's not going to be quite the dart throwing contest that it's been in previous years. Wispy fescue, I mentioned you'll see it on top of the bunkers. They've also added it into a number of places, including the ditches that were in Donald Ross's original design and kind of over time got removed. Those ditches have been restored primarily to improve the drainage and irrigation. Again, on a golf course that's flat like this, you need to move the water around somehow when it rains. They did it here with a series of ditches that also come into play. So they'll give players another hazard, another penalty area to think about. And those ditches have that wispy fescue in them as well. And on number 14, this was the only water hazard on the golf course that has been removed and replaced with a fescue area. It's yet to be seen how the fescue, that wispy grass, will play. It sounds like it will be playable. It's not lose your ball kind of fescue. It's more like, British Open type native grasses, if you will. I think players will be able to find their ball and play from it, but it's definitely going to give the course more character when you look at the appearance of it. Now, I still think it's valuable to look at some of the winning trends. What has been successful here at this golf course. In spite of these changes, I think many of these things will still hold true. The character of the golf course is going to change in its look. It's going to change in its par. But the attributes that it takes to be successful, I think, will still stand for the most part. You may see a series of players tacked in the golf course a different way. But let's get into the trends, and then we'll talk about that a little bit more. So the last 5 winners finished the week top 11 in strokes gained approach. This isn't unique to Detroit Golf Club. This kind of thing happens everywhere. Iron play is crucial. They did hit, the last 6 winners, 55 or more greens of regulation. So that takes the short game out of it and in a big way. It becomes far less important when you're putting for birdie. You'll see a number of players this week, I'm guessing, that have 12 short game opportunities. The leader in scrambling maybe 10 for 12 in scrambling because you can hit so many greens of regulation, especially if you're playing well. 5 of the last 6 winners finished top 22 in strokes game putting. I think that is a factor of the low scores. You have to make some putts in order to shoot numbers like that. But I don't think putting is really a huge deciding factor. Although putting has been the most difficult aspect on this golf course since its inception on the PGA Tour. But I think that there are more ways to do it. I don't think this is quite a putting contest, if that makes sense. 4 of the last 5 winners entered the week top 44 in birdie average. That I do believe is important. Even when scores are low, you don't always see a trend like this. The top 50 guys or so are making a lot of birdies, and all the winners here seem to be in that group. So, you don't have to be the best birdie maker on the PGA Tour, but you got to make a lot of birdies. I'm looking for guys that are making at least 4 a round. Maybe you could dip down to 3.8 or something like that. But birdie average, very important. 4 of the last 6 winners entered the week top 25 in strokes gained off the tee. Okay, that's a pretty small list. These are really strong drivers of the golf ball, and that was a huge separator in the past at Detroit Golf Club. And I still think it will be. I still think driving is going to be very important. I actually prefer to look at strokes gained off the tee this week than driving distance, which is the next trend. 5 of the last 6 winners entered top 50 in driving distance. That's a really hard number to crack. You got to be really long to rank top 50 on the PGA Tour. It's a select group. You'll see guys averaging 305 off the tee that aren't in the top 50. So it has been a bomber's paradise. And I still think that will hold true. And even if the fairway bunkers and cross bunkers aren't carryable, it's still an advantage. So it's never going to hurt you to take a look at the long hitters. It's not going to hurt you at all in any case. I would mix it with a little course history or comp courses. Definitely want to look at iron play as well. It's not a place, it's not a situation given the changes where I want to look at specialists of any kind. But if there's one area that I would take a specialist, it would be driving distance. I think it could provide an even bigger advantage than we're used to seeing here at Detroit Golf Club, because the shorter players will have more decisions to make than the longest of players. That's my understanding so far. So in the next portion of the show here, we look at course history and we look at comp courses. And this is where we go through the 10 best players we'll look at the 10 best players here at Detroit Golf Club, and we'll look at the 10 best players at 3 statistical comp courses. And we'll see what kind of names stick out. So this is the portion where you want to just be paying attention to the names and names that you see over and over again, and then we'll revisit those and look at how they've been playing recently. And that's how we're going to kind of formulate this list. So the best course history at Detroit Golf Club since 2019. Here are the top 10 players. Number 1, Taylor Moore. I was surprised to see that name there. And number 2, Patrick Cantlay. Number 3, Cameron Young. Then Max Grazerman. And Jake Knapp at number 5. He played better last week. Chris Kirk at number 6. Cam Davis, number 7. Number 8, Tony Finau. Taylor Pendrith at number 9. And Akshay Bhatia at number 10. So looking at this, I notice that you see a lot of long hitters. Patrick Cantlay is a really good player and typically has been one of the better players in the field when he's played here at the Rocket Classic. But you look at Cam Young, Jake Knapp, Cam Davis, Tony Finau, Taylor Pendrith. These are guys that can really move it off the tee, and it's no surprise that they all find their way in this course history model. Next, we take a look at the first comp course, which will surprise you, because it surprised me in a big way. I didn't expect to see Harbour Town as the most correlated golf course to success. Well, success at Harbour Town correlates very strongly to success at the Rocket Classic at Detroit Golf Club. I found that to be very interesting. But this is about the data. So we're going to look at the data, see the names, and see if any of them pop. First, we have Patrick Cantlay again. Second, we have Andrew Novak, then Matt Kuchar, Cam Davis again, Chris Kirk again, Russell Henley, Sung Jae Im, Eric Van Rooyen, Jordan Spieth, and Webb Simpson. Now, these are kind of Cam Davis who can move it. I think he actually plays short golf courses really well. Patrick Cantlay, again, one of the better players in the field, happens to love Harbour Town. I'm not sure if there's a real correlation here or if Patrick Cantlay is just really good and plays well at both of these venues. So I found that to be pretty interesting. But Chris Kirk lost in a playoff at the Rocket Classic last year and seems to do well at Harbour Town, but he was one of the shorter hitters on the list of the Rocket Classic, a guy who can figure it out in a multitude of ways. Next, we're going to take a look at the second golf course that correlates to Detroit Golf Club, and that's Innisbrook Resort. So these are the 10 best players in this field at the Rocket Classic and how they perform at Innisbrook Resort. It's Xander Schauffele has the best course history at Innisbrook Resort of anyone in this field. Jordan Spieth is second. Brooks Koepka, Corey Connors, Ryo Hisatsune, Davis Riley, Jacob Bridgman, Seamus Power, Billy Horschel, and Chandler Phillips. That's a very different looking list. Almost no correlation between the first two there. So without further ado, let's move right on to the third, which is Silverado Resort. This one makes a lot of sense to me. It's another tree-lined golf course. There's, rough is the primary penalty for missing the fairway off the tee. And the fairways are narrow, but guys still hit driver all over the place. That's exactly what we saw at the Rocket Classic over the past couple of years. Just get it out there. The farther, the better, and hit short irons and wedges close. Here are the 10 best players in this field at Silverado Resort. Ben Griffin, number 1. Okay, he came in second last year to Scotty Scheffler. Patrick Fishburne, number 2, another long hitter. Matt Kuchar, quite the opposite, a very short hitter. Rico Hoey, Corey Connors, Davis Thompson, number 6, popping up again. Emiliano Grillo was all over our board last week and had a great week. Cam Davis, number 8. He's been on all of them except Innisbrook Resort. Brendan Todd at number 9, and rounding out the top 10 is Hideki Matsuyama at number 10. So a pretty good list. The big-time names that stand out to me in this section would be Cam Davis, for sure. Davis Thompson has piqued my interest. Xander Schauffele has piqued my interest. I'm not really sure what we're going to get out of Xander. He's probably not making my list, but I am very curious to see how it plays. It could play right into his hands. So he's another interesting one. Hideki playing so well last week also has my interest as well. But the next thing that we want to look at, this is important you always want to start here. The site that I use for most of my data is rickrungood.com. I highly recommend you go check it out. It's the best data website going. It's so easy to use. Anyway, I digress. I was looking at the comp courses there, and I was looking at key course statistics based on simply the data. And when you look at that, every single week, strokes gained total is the most important thing at every golf course because it determines who the best players are. So I like to look at the last 36 rounds. I'll also take a peek at the last 24 rounds and the last 50 rounds just to get an idea of who the best players are over varying periods of time. But 36 is right in the middle there, and it seems to give us a really good idea. You can get some sleepers in there. For instance, last week, this is where Ben Coles came right to the forefront because he was second in the field in strokes gained total behind only Scotty Scheffler over the last 36 rounds. That made a big difference for me and, helped me pick Ben Coles. I played him in one and done. I played him in my PGA Tour fantasy game. I played a lot of Ben Coles because I thought he was really undervalued. And the strokes gained total metric led us right to him. So let's take a look at this week, the best 10 players in this field, strokes gained total over the last 36 rounds. Wyndham Clark leads the way. Jackson Koiven, no surprise, is second. Incredible what he did last week. Ben Coles, there he is again. He's fallen to number 3. Siwoo Kim at number 4. Cameron Young at number 5. Chris Gotterup at number 6. Patrick Cantlay at number 7. Ben Griffin at 8. J.J. Spawn at 9, and Jackson Suber at number 10. This is a good list. A lot of these guys are ranked pretty highly in the odds. There's not a whole lot of discrepancy here like there was last week. Ben Coles would definitely give you quite a bit of value. Jackson Suber would give you a little value too, although I'm curious of what direction he's going in. But this looks pretty similar to the top guys when you look at the odds or when you look at DFS pricing. This list kind of has the best players right there in the mix as well. So it's not really surprising. It doesn't quite do what it did last week, but it's always important to look at. Now, we've talked about how important driving distance has been at Detroit Golf Club. I think it still can be. But instead of looking at the longest players in the field, I want to look at the best drivers of the golf ball in the field. And to do that, we'll look at strokes gained off the tee. So these are the 10 best players in the field and strokes gained off the tee over the last 36 rounds. Let's take a look. Michael Brennan leads the way. He was in contention heading into the final round last week at the 3M Open. Then you got Neil Shipley at number 2, Doug Gim, number 3, Xander Schauffele popping up again at number 4, Rasmus Niergaard Peterson, number 5, Cameron Young, number 6, Alejandro Tosti, number 7, Chris Gotterup at 8, Jesper Svensson at 9, Rico Hoey at 10. So you got a mix here. You got a couple of value plays: Michael Brennan, Neil Shipley, Doug Gim, Rasmus Niergaard Peterson. These are all value plays. And then you got a couple of the heavy hitters like Cam Young, Chris Gotterup, and Xander Schauffele. It's a nice mix when it comes to driving the golf ball. And if it's important, it wouldn't surprise me if the top guys were near the top of the leaderboard. I would expect that. And it wouldn't surprise me, based on seeing this, if Michael Brennan got himself in the mix again, or Jesper Svensson, or if you've never heard of Rasmus Niergaard Peterson, this is the kind of golf course where he could really step up and excel and play beyond his potential, if you will. Now, the last thing I want to look at, and this is just something I was curious about. I just wanted to see if there was any more crossover in the names. So I went to Approach Play, and I looked at the best 10 players in this field in strokes gained approach over the last 36 rounds. And this is almost like a safety net because it's a new golf course. We're not sure exactly how it's going to play. But one thing I do know is every single week, Approach Play is the king. The guy that hits their irons the best is usually the guy that ends up in contention at least, if not winning. So very important aspect. Just ask Jackson Coyven. Flushed his irons all week last week and ended up winning by 3 over Scotty Scheffler, who's the best iron player in the world and the best player in the world. There's no coincidences there. So 10 best players in this field over the last 36 rounds in strokes gained approach are Ben Coles. Number 1, no surprise he's been playing so well. He's been flushing his irons. J.J. Spawn, another guy, flushing his irons. He's been doing that all year. Christian Bezuidenhout, Jackson Suber, Joel Damon, always making lists like this. Patrick Cantlay, William Mao, Tom Hoagie, Siwoo Kim at number 9, Daniel Brown at number 10. So some of these are interesting to me. Patrick Cantlay, again, popping up. He may be someone you want to consider. He is a kind of top-end player, if you will, when you look at odds and DFS pricing, but he could definitely be a worthy candidate to step up and perform well. I'm very curious about Ben Coles. I'm not sure if fatigue is setting in. I think last week, a lot of time in contention, probably took a lot out of him. Can he do it again? Yes. Will he? Yet to be seen. Not sure this golf course is quite as good for Ben Coles as it was last week. J.J. Spawn, he's had some other issues to deal with, although, again, one of the best players in the world, could definitely contend. So then you look at some of the more surprising names, Joel Damon. I'm not sure this is really the place where you can separate yourself with just iron play, and he's very much a specialist. One of the best iron players in the game, but he's not a very long hitter, and he can struggle on the greens to some degree as well. So he gives me some concern. Tom Hoagie's another one of those. He has put together some great putting performances over the years, and that's why he's gotten in contention through his career. But right now he's a little more of a specialist with the irons. So, this list it's not really telling me anything that I didn't already know or think, but I definitely wanted to bring it to you. And if you have a different thought, if you were liking Joel Damon coming in and this just helps solidify it, by all means, go for it. It definitely highlights what Ben Coles has been up to. Just my question is always, how do you come back from contention the very next week, especially if you've played 11 of 12 events like Ben Coles has. I worry about fatigue with him. But that brings us to the player analysis portion, which I do want to get into right now. I want to start off with some of my favorite players on the board this week. And to me, it all starts with Cameron Young. Cameron Young coming off a runner-up finish at the Open. He is a great driver of the golf ball. If you remember nothing else, go back to the Players' Championship and look at the tee shot he hit on number 18. He can absolutely send it, and he's been driving it well lately too. At the Open Championship, he gained nearly 5 strokes off the tee, nearly 3 strokes off the tee at the Travelers. He has the ability to really separate himself from the field with his driving game. And his iron play has been stellar all season long. Definitely his best iron play season on the PGA Tour. And he's gained strokes in every event but one since the Genesis Invitational. And many of these he's gained 3, 4, 5, even at times 7 strokes approaching the green. And last week, in his last start at the Open, he gained over 4 strokes approaching the green. So I'm very interested in Cam Young. Now, the last piece that I want to bring up is what he's done here. Last year, he came in tied 46th. He didn't putt very well. He's not putting very well now. Gives me a little concern. Although, at the Rocket Classic in 24, he finished tied 6th and basically was a 0 putter for the week and still finished tied 6th. So based on the way he's hitting the ball now, I know he's been struggling with the putter, but this is a place where in 2022 he did putt very well. He gained 3.4 strokes, came in tied second, and really should have won. I just think this is a perfect setup for him, and he can get the job done even without having a hot week on the greens. Cam Young is the favorite, highest priced DraftKings player, and I think he's worth it. Next, we go to Chris Gotterup, who is also a very high-end player in this field and exemplifies some of the very similar characteristics. An elite driver of the golf ball. In 4 out of his last 5 events, he's gained at least 2 strokes off the tee. This is one of those golf courses where he can pile up strokes off the tee. It's a huge head start. Chris Gotterup has it. His iron play has been great as well. Since the Truist Championship back in May, he's only lost strokes on approach. In fact, he's only gained less than 1 stroke approaching the green in 1 event. And that was, ironically, the event he won, the John Deere Classic, where he lost less than a tenth of a stroke approaching the green. He can get the job done on the greens as well. He's gained a shot or more in 3 of his last 4 off on the greens. And the Open Championship was the first event he lost strokes putting in since the Genesis Invitational back in February. So it's been really good through the bag for Chris Gotterup, coming off a T18 at the Open, a T11 at the Scottish, and a win at the John Deere. Chris Gotterup is an absolute must on this list. High winning potential. Speaking of winning potential, why not go to a guy that's won twice already on tour? In fact, all the guys we've talked about so far have been multiple-time winners on tour, and I think they could add to the list. One of them is Wyndham Clark. Again, Wyndham Clark has a lot of distance off the tee. He's not the most accurate player. This is the kind of place you can get away with that. You can beat the field with distance, and I think Wyndham Clark has enough of it. His iron play has been, he's had the ability to get very hot with his irons. It hasn't been as consistent as Gotterup and Young, but he still shows the ability to spike. At the Memorial Tournament, he gained nearly 9 strokes approaching the green, just on approach play. 4.5 at the CJ Cup Byron Nelson, which he obviously won. At the Scottish Open, he gained 3 strokes approaching the green, and he did the same thing at the U.S. Open, which he won. He has lost strokes approaching the green in a couple of events. One of them was the Travelers, and he still finished in a tie for 5th. Why is that a possibility? Because he putts the eyes out of it and has been putting great for a long time. The Open was unfortunate. He missed the cut there. He didn't really ever get the putter going. He never really got anything going. But I still think what we saw before the Open is still there for Wyndham Clark. I'm not afraid of going back. moving on down the list here, Ben Griffin. So this is kind of that next tier. He's still a top tier player, but a little more value when it comes to Ben Griffin this week, and I've been impressed. It's been a less than season if you compare it to last year, but it's still been really good. I mean, he has gained a shot or more in 5 out of his last 6 events approaching the green. It's been very good. He's gained strokes around the green in every event since the Truist Championship, and he's gained strokes putting in 2 out of his last 3. And it was really good before that. He went on a 6-event run where he gained strokes putting in all of them. Then a couple of bad tournaments, but lately it seems like it's back on track. He finished tied 59th at the Open, tied 21st at the John Deere, tied 10th at the Travelers, tied 17th at the U.S. Open. I think this is pretty good form, pretty decent, especially when you look at his course history, which was a tied 13th last year, tied 31st in 24, and a tied 33rd back in 2023. I think Ben Griffin is set up for another great event. And remember, he was a part of our comp courses. He was a runner-up last year at Silverado, one of our comp courses. So big fan of Ben Griffin this week. Moving on down the line, next we go to a former champion here, Ricky Fowler. I'm very excited with what Ricky has going on. He didn't show up on any of our lists, including the course history list at the Rocket Classic, which he won. So let's just start with his course history because, you don't see this very often. Past champions would normally make their way into the top 10 in a field, but unfortunately, Ricky missed the cut last year, tied 31st in 24. That was after his win in 2023. In 2020, he also has a T12 here. So I think there's enough evidence to say Ricky can play well here, which leads us right to his recent form, which, again, he didn't come up on a lot of our metrics. They're a little longer form, a little longer term, but Ricky's playing well right now. Tied 15th at the John Deere Classic, tied 18th at the Open, and he gained 2 shots or more in both of those events, off the tee and approaching the green, and he gained strokes putting in both of them. It's a game that's very complete. He's always been a very well-rounded player. I think things are moving in the right direction, and I think this is a great golf course for him. Now we start getting down into some of the more value names, if you will, and first I go right to Michael Brennan, who is, I'm a huge fan of him, but he's more of a specialist. He is a driving specialist, which I'd like to avoid specialists this week, but I think there's a little more to Michael Brennan because his iron play is also very good. He gained 6 strokes approaching the green at the 3M Open last week. He gained 3 at the Scottish Open, 4 at the John Deere Classic, 1.5 at the U.S. Open. That makes for 4 out of his last 5 events. He's gained strokes approaching the green. The irons are hot right now. He probably didn't show up in our approach list because he lost 3.2 shots at the Open Championship approaching the green. But that's a very different test than he'll face this week at the Rocket Classic. So I think Michael Brennan is kind of the kind of specialist that will have a great week at a golf course like this. Next, we go to Davis Thompson. Davis Thompson had me thinking this past week at the 3M. He finished tied 7th. And I look at the finishing positions, and it's a miscut at the Byron Nelson, a tied 35th at the Charles Schwab, a tied 45th at the Canadian Open, a miscut at the U.S. Open, tied 26th at the John Deere Classic, one of his a golf course he'd won on before, miscut at the ISCO, an opposite field event, and then T7 at the 3M. Why does this happen? How do you predict when a player has a weak-looking resume and they rattle off a top 10? Where does that come from? And if you go back and watch, you don't have to do this, but if you want to check me on it, go back and watch the 3M Open preview and look at how many times Davis Thompson's name popped up in the course history metrics, the course comp metrics, some of the strokes gain metrics as well. He popped up all the time. And I looked at the resume and ignored it. And he stepped up and performed very well. Well, this is another one of those golf courses, and for the second week in a row, that suits him very well. It's a tied 34th in 2025, tied second in 2024, tied 24th in 2023, tied 58th in 2021. When you consider who Davis Thompson is as a player, I think this is a pretty good golf course for him. And he's now comes into this week gaining 2 or more strokes approaching the green in 3 straight. He's gained a shot or more off the tee in 3 out of his last 4. And he gained strokes putting last week for the first time in 3 weeks. Maybe he's getting something going. So I think it's time to start paying attention to Davis Thompson. He's 7,700 on DraftKings, so kind of a mid-level play to value play. But I think it's time we pay attention when Davis Thompson's name pops up on these lists. Next, we go to another specialist, and that's Rasmus Nergaard Peterson. He is another driving specialist. He's gained a shot or more off the tee in every event since the Cognizant Classic. And he's played a lot, but the Cognizant Classic ended March 1st. So it's been a long time since he struggled off the tee, and he hits it a long way. And last week at the 3M Open, he gained 5.6 strokes off the tee, 4.2 at the Open Championship, where he finished tied 9th. Another shot and a half at the Scottish Open. I think this is a specialist, and this is the golf course to play a driving specialist like Rasmus Nergaard Peterson. Some of the other things I like, he's gained strokes approaching the green, at least a shot, in 3 out of his last 5. That seems to be trending in the right direction. He's gained strokes around the green in his last 2 as well, about two strokes in the Open Championship and 3 strokes at the 3M Open. So I think this could be a really good spot for Rasmus Nergaard Peterson because I love what he does with the driver. A couple more players to go through here, just 2 more. First, we go to another driving specialist in Kevin Yu. He's one of the best drivers of the ball on the PGA Tour. He has gained strokes off the tee in every event since the Valero Texas Open, which took place before the Masters. So he has been driving the ball great lately. And in 5 out of his last 6 events, he's also gained strokes approaching the green. And it's finally leading to some results because he's gained strokes putting in 3 out of his last 4. I think that's a really good sign. And now we see a T16 at the 3M, T24 at the Corrales Punta Cana Championship, missed cut at the Scottish, tied 15th at the John Deere Classic, tied 29th at the RBC Canadian Open. The finishing positions are starting to match the ball striking numbers for Kevin Yu, and I do believe that this is, a great spot for a great driver. Best finish here was tied 31st back in 2024. We'll see if he can make a move on that and improve on that position. Last but not least, Chandler Phillips was in contention all week last week, ended up finishing in a tie for 3rd at 20 under par. So only Scotty Scheffler and Jackson Coyven beat him last week. And what I really like is Chandler Phillips has gained strokes across the board. Every category that's off the tee, approaching the green, around the green, and putt-in his last 2 events. And he also has now 3 straight top 15 finishes. And in 4 of his last 5 events, he's finished in the top 15. That's every event except the U.S. Open. So T15 at the Canadian Open, T15 at the John Deere, T15 at the ISCO, and tied 3rd at the 3M Open. Things are looking really good for Chandler Phillips, who can get red hot with the putter. He is not a driving specialist. He's not a very long hitter, but that iron play has looked great the last 2 weeks. Gained 6 shots combined between the last 2 events approaching the green, and he's gained strokes putting and around the green in his last 3 events as well. So Chandler Phillips also looking very strong this week. Hopefully last week wasn't the peak. I always wonder, are we going to kind of taper out after a string of good performances? In the case of Chandler Phillips, I think his play has been too good to ignore. I think he's going to have another good one at the Rocket Classic. Thanks so much for watching tonight. I hope you enjoyed it. I want to hear your comments in the chat. Leave them right below. Who do you think's going to win the 3M Open? So definitely leave a comment, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. That's all we have for you here on Greg Ducharme Golf, and we'll see you again next time.